Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today.
Welcome into Inside Baylor Sports. I am Grayson Grunhafer, and today I am joined by Sikkim 365 co-owner and lead basketball analyst Ashley Hodge. Today we are going to preview the Continental Tire Baha Championship. Baylor obviously gets St. John's in the first matchup. That's the game that we're primarily going to focus on, but Tennessee and Virginia are both undefeated, and they're alive on the other side of the bracket. So bunch of undefeated teams aside from Baylor. But before we get to that, Ashley, how's it going? You excited for this tournament coming up?
Oh, yeah. This is another great test for the Bears. You know, we knew before the season started that Gonzaga and Arkansas, and then this tournament, and then at UConn would be the primary non-conference games to get us ready for the brutal Big 12 slate. But I'm excited to see how much Baylor's improved, and, great test coming out of the gate with St. John's.
And things have kind of come together nicely as far as this tournament goes, with all of the teams being undefeated. So
right.
You're pretty much guaranteed to face a good team. I think as we go through this, you'll kind of get a sense of probably where I think you and I probably agree on things. I think it's very clear that 3 of these teams are probably going to be quad 1 teams throughout the year. And then Virginia is kind of the team that might bottom out on them. I'm not really sure that they're very good, especially after losing Tony Bennett. But outside of that, Baylor's got some opportunities here to make up for that Gonzaga loss.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if they are able to beat St. John's, that's a big if. That, the analytics sites have that a toss-up game with Baylor as a slight favorite. Then, you probably will get Tennessee in the championship game. I'm expecting. Stranger things have happened. But, those would be opportunities for 2 quad 1 wins. And they've already got a quad 1 win, we believe, in their back pocket with Arkansas. And then you got a tough game at UConn, another big opportunity. So really, really great chance to make up for the debacle against Gonzaga. I will say that, you look around the country, that first road game against comparable teams, you're seeing a lot of blowouts. Purdue took care of Alabama with relative ease, and then they get blown out by Marquette last night. Alabama, or not Alabama, who was the other big profile game that was lopsided?
Ooh.
Duke and Kentucky was neutral.
Yeah.
There was one other one that's not coming to mind right now, but you see that first road test. That's a big theory of mine that when teams first go on the road, it's a shock to the system. Baylor certainly saw that with Gonzaga. And hopefully those experiences, Baylor's played 2 really tough games, and St. John's more eased into their schedule so far. And hopefully that'll pay dividends in this game tomorrow night.
I think it definitely could. I mean, so just looking at St. John's right now, they're 4-0. We're not going to go through every game, but they did beat New Mexico, which I think New Mexico is going to be a borderline bowl. I mean, they might make the tournament. They're going to, I think, probably have to win their conference, but maybe they can get in as an at large. They're pretty good though. I mean, they're historically in recent years, they've been solid, right? Father-son
matchup. The St. John's fans were chanting, "Who's your daddy?" at the end, and Rick Pitino had to do the no, not this. That was an interesting matchup. There hasn't been too many father-son matchups over the years, but I do think that that's a quality win, but it's also on your home court. New Mexico's flying across the country, much like we did to Gonzaga. So this will be more of a test for St. John's, obviously, and a test for Baylor. We'll see how we've progressed. This is an experienced team. A couple guys that are contributing, a lot for St. John's are in their second year in the Pitino system. Then you got a lot of transfers, Zuby, their center, has been there a couple of years, the Kansas transfer. Of course, you got Kadari Richmond, who we saw up and close and personal for Seton Hall, and expected to be the guy this year. Hasn't scored as much, but stuff in the stat sheet in other areas. And then Davion Smith from Utah. They got a loaded roster, a lot of experience, some meshing new parts like Baylor with some returning guys. It'll be interesting to see if Langston Love is finally a go this tournament. That'll, storyline we're watching. Hopefully he can play, but certainly not counting on him at this point, to be thrown into the fire. I'm interested to see how Baylor matches up. I do think, if Norchad stays out of foul trouble, I like Baylor's chances in this one.
So just taking a quick second glance at St. John's, Ken Pom has them at 17 in the country. Currently, they're ranked number 22 in the country, according to the polls. They have the number 22 rated offense, 18 rated defense. They've taken care of business. I mean, Their schedule has been very easy and manageable outside of New Mexico, and they've won the games. They've won it at a pretty high level. They got a bunch of guys on this roster that can score, a bunch of guys that can rebound, but they're not very big. They have some longer wing types, and that's pretty much their big guys that they're going to kind of rely on.
Yeah, no question. And I'm sure Rick Pitino's been working on the zone. I'm guessing that Baylor will play quite a bit of zone against them because they're not the best 3-point shooting team. We know Kadari Richmond likes to get in the paint and get his buckets in the paint, and not the best 3-point shooter. So I'm sure the game plan will be to try to make him shoot threes and to, really test their ability to make that second and third pass. But they're a dangerous team. They got length. They're going to be good on defense. Baylor's really efficient on offense. They've looked terrific the last 2 games, did a lot of good things against Arkansas as well. But you're looking to see them put that complete performance together from an offensive and defensive standpoint. We've seen signs the last 2 games of really good defense against overmatched opponents for sure. But, hopefully Baylor can, really continue to, excel on the defensive end. And Josh, I like what I saw from Josh the last 2 games, more active. We're going to need that. He's got to play big today. And we're going to need Jalen Celestine to hit the glass, really contribute in that area. And then, of course, Norchad staying out of foul trouble. That's a must.
Right. And this feels like a great matchup for Norchad. This feels like one where he should be able to kind of do whatever he wants to a certain extent. I mean, I think the thing about St. John's that's interesting, though, it kind of reminds me of Gonzaga in the way that they have a bunch of guys that are like 6'6" and up. What they're missing that Gonzaga had was obviously Gonzaga has like 3 awesome 6'9", 6'10", 6'11" guys that they just rotate in. So it's a little bit different in that regard, but athletically, lengthwise, St. John's definitely has that on the perimeter. Yeah,
for sure. And the way, if we do play man and we do switch, there's opportunity for St. John's to take advantage of some height mismatches. Jaden Nunn, Rob Wright, and Jeremy Roach are all smaller guards, compared to what St. John's is going to throw out there. So, we really have to be sound defensively, get deflections, cause havoc on the perimeter. I'm seeing signs that that's improving, but certainly it has a long way to go to be the kind of defense we need to be, to match what I think is going to be a top 5 offense all year long. We're finally starting to shoot the 3, really well, after a terrible start against Gonzaga and just a so-so performance against Arkansas, but shooting the 3. But, we get Jalen going. He's a bucket. VJ's starting to feel more comfortable with his 3-point shot. Hopefully we can get him creeping up in the 30s, and that really would put a lot of stress on the defense because we know Roach, Wright, Jaden Nunn, when Langston gets back, we know those are all great 3-point shooters. And then we know Celestine's advertised as a really good 3-point shooter. So we can put a lot of stress on the defense when we get all cylinders firing.
Exactly. So kind of diving a little bit deeper into St. John's, their leading scorer is RJ Luis, and he's at 17.5 points, 7.8 rebounds, 3 assists. He's 6'7". He's a returner, very familiar with what they're trying to run. I think that's a big reason why he's gotten off to the hot start compared to maybe their transfers that they brought in, even though they're playing well. You look at Davion Smith, you look at Kadari Richmond, both of them are filling up the stat sheet. They're just not scoring or shooting the ball, I think, at the level that they probably will by the end of the year. They also have Simeon Wilcher, who's another returner, so gives them some more depth experience at the guard spot. He's 6'4", and then you mentioned Zuby Ejiofor. They're 6'9", basically center. I mean, that's kind of what he's going to be for them. They rotate some other guys in, but he averages 8.5 points, 5 rebounds, solid, not elite. And then the other thing that stood out to me about this roster, they have 3 kids from Texas at St. John's. I found that to be kind of an interesting thing there. Obviously, transfers factor into that.
Sure. And Vince Yu, I don't know how to pronounce his last name properly, but he didn't play in the last game. So I haven't even looked at whether he's dealing with an injury of some sort. But he's a long guy, started at USC, had the heart issue, and then transferred to St. John's. He's a guy that can also cause some issues with the shot blocking and rebounding and length. But whether he plays or not remains to be seen. But it's a challenge. I mean, they've got 7 guys they're relying on, just like Baylor, maybe 8 if Vince can play. But they're going to pose some different challenges for us, much like Arkansas. I think they're constructed similar to Arkansas, except they have more experience in the backcourt, and that's a key difference. They got guys that have been through the wars and been in these tough close games, and particularly Kadari Richmond, was an all Big East guy last year, and arguably one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the transfer portal this past cycle. So I expect him to have a big game against Baylor and have a big tournament.
Right. He and Davion Smith were both guys that were, I'm not going to say linked to Baylor, but guys that I think people were kind of looking at as, potentially good fits, had
Right.
Baylor not landed Jeremy Roach and whatnot, but they were big names, both of them in the portal. They had a lot of production at their previous stop, and now they're at St. John's, and they're both playing well. Don't get me wrong. They're filling up the stat sheet. It's just the scoring,
right,
I think, is where the uptick comes. And of course, they're going to play Baylor, and so they're both probably going to score, 15 points and have their best game. But it should be interesting. 2 really nice players and 2 guys that can provide a little bit of a mismatch. So when you look at St. John's, what's going to be the key, you think, for Baylor in this matchup to try to stop them, and then on the opposite end score on them?
Yeah, I mean, I think Baylor's got to extend their defense and open up the inside for Norchad. So got to make threes. I think Baylor's relying on the 3, and I think they're going to need to take a lot of threes and make a lot of threes, and really take care of the basketball, not turn it over. Those are the keys I'm looking for on offense. And defensively, I just think it's going to be perimeter ball pressure. This is what Rick Pitino teams have done for years. They've been really good at deflections. I know that's something he charts, religiously, is how many, hands they get on balls, and how many, the ability to disrupt an offense and make you uncomfortable. Baylor's, played a couple teams recently, much lower versions of that in Tarleton and Sam Houston State, but that's been a focus for them. They want to make you uncomfortable, on the offensive end, and really disrupt your offense. So hopefully the Bears are prepared for that and do a good job taking care of the basketball. I think the key for me is, can Baylor be under 12 turnovers, and can they shoot better than 30% from 3? If they hit those numbers, I like their chances to advance and make the championship game.
I think Gonzaga really challenged them in that regard. They played really physical defense, which is not what you typically expect from a Gonzaga team. But I think also in that environment, it certainly helped give them the energy to do that for a full game. And I think that game probably will prepare Baylor for a test like this. Arkansas, as we know, doesn't play defense, but I think you go into this matchup and you feel like St. John's is probably going to give you more of the ball pressure that Gonzaga gave you. And you're going to kind of have to, weather that storm a little bit. Over the last couple games, anything about Baylor that has, stood out to you from just, I know the teams they played, they completely overmatched, and I know they were missing guys too. So they weren't even their full teams, but anything stand out about Baylor?
I think the play of Josh was encouraging to me. I liked his activity. I liked his energy in both of those games. I thought Jeremy Roach is settling down. I thought he, shot the ball really well, which he didn't do in the scrimmages and didn't do in the first 2 games as much from the 3-point line. So it's good to see him, just make open threes. And the passing was terrific. There was a play where VJ was going out of bounds, and I believe he threw it either to Jalen Celestine or Roach for a wide open 3. Just the ability to share the ball, make that extra pass. I love all those things. I love the energy. Like, sometimes these games where you're playing at home, sandwiched between tough games, coming off the Arkansas win, and then they're getting ready for the Bahamas, you can let down. But, Baylor took care of business and, blew those teams out from start to finish. So that was encouraging. So I think he's got their attention. I think the coaches, I think we have an excellent staff. They're getting to know each other. We got new players getting to know each other. But this is a team that's really, put together to win and to win championships. And I think you won't see the full potential until you get Langston back into the rotation. But I think you'll see glimpses of it. And we're certainly making some progress after that shocker in Spokane.
I think people underestimate the idea that you get to play these teams that you're for sure going to beat, but taking advantage of those opportunities to get better and grow out your roster and also build confidence, right? I mean, that's a big thing. Like, some of these guys weren't shooting the ball very well the first couple games, like Jalen Celestine, and then he gets an opportunity to try to get himself, into a groove, right? As things start, moving forward, and everyone got that opportunity, right? Because they weren't shooting the ball at the level that we expect quite yet. But I think they're potentially turning that corner. We'll see how they do against better defenses. But I think those games are important. And like, Baylor didn't have that opportunity at the beginning of the year. They had to go right into playing an awesome Gonzaga team. And then another game where you got to get up to play Arkansas, another team that's probably a quad one team. They never had that opportunity to really just focus on themselves. Instead, they had to focus on their opponent as well.
Yeah, and I think you can't underestimate, getting Jason Azumoto some big minutes and, having him get confidence out there. I think that's huge because he's the eighth guy right now, and you may need him. I mean, Norchad gets in foul trouble, or God forbid you have an injury in a game. He's going to have to play significant minutes. He certainly has the talent to do that. We know he was a high recruit, but he needs to have confidence to go in these games and perform at a high level. So I think that was big. He played really well against Tarleton, made some really, big plays. And, I think just, getting these guys that experience playing together, against real competition, not against each other, not in a scrimmage environment, in front of fans. Those will all pay dividends. I think this is going to be a home environment for Baylor. I think, VJ's people are going to turn out. I think you're going to see a lot of people rooting for Baylor because of VJ Edgecombe being from the Bahamas. So hopefully this is a hostile environment for St. John's. And if Baylor is able to advance, Tennessee or Virginia in the next game, I think this could be a potential opportunity for Baylor to get some crowd support behind them.
Okay, speaking of that second game, let's talk briefly on this. Tennessee, number 11 team in the nation, they're 4-0. They got 4 easy wins. They went on the road to Louisville and just destroyed Louisville, who seems like they're still in a rebuild, which that rebuild could last a long time there. Currently, Tennessee, Ken Pom, they are number 6 in the country, 18th on offense, number 4 on defense, which is something we've come to expect from the Vols over the last few years. Great defensive team, continuing to try to find themselves offensively. That's always been their struggle when they get to the tournament. Last year, they had Dalton Connect. They don't really have that guy this year, but they're a very balanced team with some good players, and they added some transfers that are definitely solid as well. Looking at their opponent, Virginia's 3-0. They snuck by Campbell in the first game of the year. Then they beat a Villanova team, which on paper looks like a good win, but Villanova's 3-3. They're still trying to figure out things for themselves. And then, of course, Virginia lost Tony Bennett this offseason. Right. So they're trying to figure out, who are they as a program as well. Ken Pom has them at number 76, the 129th offense and the 46th defense in the country. They're clearly the weakest team by pretty much every metric as you go into this tournament. What's your kind of expectation for this game, and what do you see from these two teams so far?
First 1 to 40 wins. This is going to be a game that you're not going to expect much offense. Two teams that are really geared towards, brutal slugfest. And that may be a big advantage for the winner of the St. John's Baylor game, because I expect, just a physical, hard fought, tough game with a lot of defense, a lot of physicality. And I joke about that, but it's probably going to be true. I think the first team that gets to 40 probably wins that game. I don't expect it to be a high scoring game, maybe in the 50s, maybe in the 60s. What does Ken Palm have that game? Just for curiosity.
I don't have it off the
you don't have it. Okay.
Hand, but I can tell you this: if Tennessee ggets to 40, they're gonna win this game because Virginia, I don't know if they're getting to 35 in this one.
Yeah, it's one of those games that may make you swear off basketball. Some of these early season defensive struggles. But I'm curious to see how Virginia performs. They've got the shocker of their coach, leaving before the season, but the staff is still together, and there's a lot of continuity with the staff. I think one of their guys, their point guard, hit the portal, if I'm not mistaken. So they're kind of point guard by committee right now. But it's going to be a game, that's a big opportunity for them to prove that they're still right there in the hunt in the ACC. It's one of those teams where, they just every year they compete for ACC championships under Tony Bennett, but they've been sliding a little bit the last couple of years for sure.
They have, and I'm just sitting there going, did Tony Bennett retire to allow his assistant coach to get the job? Because if he did, why were they left with this roster? Like I don't like they're not making the tournament. I don't think this year. I mean, maybe things change, but I mean, are you keeping a coach if they don't make the tournament?
Right.
I think it's a very valid question to ask. I fully expect Tennessee to win this game. I think Tennessee is going to get through rather easily, actually, in this matchup against Virginia, and then probably play the winner of Baylor versus St. John's. Is that kind of where you're at?
Yeah, I think so too. And by the way, the game I was trying to remember earlier was Arizona at Wisconsin. Wisconsin ends up beating them by a pretty, scores over 100 on them.
Yeah.
When's the last time a Wisconsin team scored over 100 on anybody?
Yeah, but, it's a tough place to play, but dang, but
it just shows you, as good as you think you are, you go on the road for the first time and you're likely to get, blown out and beat substantially. So I say that to say that, Baylor fans are probably fretting about that Gonzaga loss, and it certainly was lopsided. You would hope that would have been more like a 16 to 18 point loss rather than a 38 point loss. But those games can snowball. That first road game is no joke. And, Baylor having faced that, I think will prepare them for this tournament. I think it will prepare them for UConn, and certainly will prepare them for the road test in the Big 12. Whereas, some of those teams in the Big 12 with the terrible schedules that they have, like a Texas Tech, as we talked about, they're going to, be in for a rude awakening on that first Big 12 road game.
Okay, so I got a couple rapid fire questions for you, Ashley.
Yes.
So if Baylor's going to win this tournament, who is going to be the most important player? We'll get to most valuable player, like who's going to, be the top guy on this team, but who's the most important to them winning this tournament?
Norchad Omier. That's my answer for the season. That's my answer for every game. It's got to stay out of foul trouble. Got to produce, double-double, death taxes. Norchad giving you a double-double. Didn't give you a double-double last game, though. I think he only had 9 rebounds and 5 points because he was in foul trouble. I think he's got to stay out of foul trouble. He's going to be the guy down low, much like he was against Arkansas. He's the most important. As far as most valuable, I'll go with VJ Edgecombe. If they win the tournament, I think staying in front of his hometown fans, I think he's going to stuff the stat sheet, and I think he's going to have a really big tournament.
Okay. Do you also anticipate he's the leading scorer for Baylor in this tournament, or are you going to go somewhere else with that one?
I'll say Jaden Nunn. Jaden Nunn's been shooting the heck out of the ball, and I think he's the forgotten guy. Defenses are going to focus on Norchad, Jeremy Roach, and VJ Edgecombe, and I think Jaden's going to get a lot of open threes, and he'll knock them down. So I kind of expect Jaden Nunn to be the leading scorer.
Okay, on opposing teams, you can only pick one guy on the 3 other teams. Who's the one guy that you're most afraid of in this tournament?
Kadari Richmond. He's a big physical, guard that can post you up. Baylor's got small guards. I just have the nightmare scenario in my mind of them being able to isolate a smaller guard and him just getting bucket after bucket after bucket on the post. He's capable of doing that. He's kind of a throwback, to some of those guys like a Bernard King and an Alex English, these guys, Mark Aguirre, that can just post you up and get buckets on the post. And we saw that, last year when Baylor played Seton Hall, fortunately the Bears pulled away and got a double-digit victory. But yeah, he's the guy that worries me.
Man, getting Langston Love back for that kind of matchup would be really nice because Langston's not giving up any ground in the post.
Yeah, maybe Jalen's the guy. Maybe you play a little bigger and have Jalen, because Jalen's got some length and he's pretty strong. He's deceptively strong. I think he gives you a lot of the same qualities that Bridges does from a defensive standpoint. Doesn't rebound as well as Bridges, but he probably shoots the ball better than Bridges overall.
Definitely. Okay, so this first matchup against St. John's, what's kind of your prediction for this game? How do you think it plays out? Do the Bears get it done and advance to the championship?
I think it's a toss-up game. I'll pick Baylor. I think the fact that they've had some significant tests already will be to their advantage. I think that this will be the first team to 70 wins. I like, Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omir's experience in situations like this. I think Jaden Nunn's experience is going to be huge. So I'm going to pick the Bears to advance to the championship.
I was getting nervous. I was thinking I might pick St. John's in this game. And then you brought up the fact that it's in the Bahamas, and obviously VJ Edgecombe is from the Bahamas. And I'm like, okay, I'm not picking against VJ in the Bahamas.
He might press. He might press. So that's the thing. Like, sometimes that works both ways. You're playing in front of the hometown people and you try to do too much. You don't play within yourself, but he's a pretty mature guy. He's already played there in big high school tournaments. So hopefully he's, and for the national team as well. So I think he'll be composed.
I was going to say, Ashley, I saw all summer that gym fully packed and him scoring on NBA players time after time, but different game. I know, very different game, but very, very curious how that plays out. I will take Baylor here as well. I think Baylor wins this probably something like 75-68, something along those lines is kind of what I'm looking at for this one. So maybe a little high scoring, but should be an interesting one. We both picked Tennessee to beat Virginia. What do you think? Blowout? Is it going to be a 5-point close game? What do you think?
Yeah, I could see Tennessee winning by double digits, but I don't think they'll blow them out by 30 or 40. I think Virginia's too sound, rebounding the ball and defensively for that to happen. I'll say Tennessee 63, Virginia 52.
Okay, so an 11-point win there. I'm going to take Tennessee as well. I'm going to have them scoring a little bit more. I'll have them at 68 and Virginia at 53. So 15-point win there for Tennessee. Next up, Virginia, St. John's in the consolation game. What do you got in that one?
I think St. John's wins and probably by double digits. I'll say St. John's 71, Virginia 58.
Yeah, I think Virginia's just in for a tough tournament. I'm going to take St. John's in that one too. I'll take them maybe a little low scoring. Maybe they won't shoot the ball as well. So I'll have it 62-51. I'll take St. John's in that one. And then finally, the championship. So we both have Baylor advancing to the championship to take on number 11 Tennessee. Fascinating matchup and a great opportunity, I think, if this does unfold this way. This is the kind of matchup that I feel like Baylor needs before Big 12 play, because this team resembles a Houston. They resemble the kind of defenses that you're going to see in the Big 12, and I really want to see Baylor face a team like that. So what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I'll go Baylor. I think it's going to be a bucket, game. So I'll say Baylor 64, Tennessee 63.
Okay, so I fully expected that I was going to pick Tennessee coming into this to win this tournament. And I think whoever wins this, it's going to be very close, I think, in the championship game. But again, I think, this VJ Edgecombe factor. You said it and then it really stood out to me. So I'm going to take Baylor, but this is going to be a war. Like a total war between these two programs. I think both teams are going to play so physical. And I'm very curious if Baylor is up for that. We know Tennessee is. That's in their culture. That's in their DNA. And it is at times in Baylor's as well. But I would say over the past couple of years, it's been hit or miss, right? You have games where they really match up physically, and then you have games where they don't quite get there from a physical perspective. I think this one will be a war. I will take Baylor to win this 65-62.
Yeah, so we're pretty close on our predictions.
Absolutely. So you're not going, Ashley. You're not going to this one?
I'm not going to this one. I have a tropical background, but I can't make it. I will say though, if you can't trust Norchad Amir, who can you trust? So I do trust Norchad's going to deliver, and I think he's going to have a great tournament.
Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. We'll talk again probably next week, I think, to recap this action and then try and kind of talk about where Baylor is at, because I think we'll have a pretty good idea of who this Baylor team is after this weekend, at least in the early part of the season. So thanks again for joining, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Sick 'em.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This is another edition of Inside Baylor Sports, a bonus episode with Ashley Hodge. Hopefully you enjoyed the preview of the Baha Mar Championship, and we will talk again next week. Sick 'em.